Good day. Before I proceed with this brief update, this is just a reminder that if you are following us on Rumble, if you're watching any of our videos on Rumble, that is to say videos by Alexander Mercouris, the Duran, or Alex Christoforou on Rumble, if you go to the top of the video, you will see there a red maroon button. If you press that red maroon button, that will take you directly to our locals homepage where you can participate in our thriving community on locals, and if you choose to become an active member, you can participate in my live streams, which take place every Wednesday at 1400 hours Eastern Standard Time, and you can also join by our active community by publishing your own exclusive content and by commenting on the various articles and videos that others publish there. Well, today we've now had more information from the Russians about what their plans are in terms of the general military situation in Donbass. And the most eye-catching news is a verbal report delivered on state television by the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu to Russian President Vladimir Putin. I would say, by the way, that there's been any number of speculative comments and claims and articles floating around the Western media and the internet about Shoigu. Some say that he's been sacked, others say that he's ill, others say that he's in disgrace, all kinds of things. I've never taken much notice of any of those. I've never taken much notice of claims that senior FSB officers are supposedly under arrest or have been sacked or any of those things, nor have I paid much attention, as you will have noticed, to various claims that various Russian commanders in the war in Ukraine have been killed. None of these claims have been officially corroborated by the Russians, and on any number of occasions they have been proved to be straightforwardly wrong. For example, the Ukrainians claimed that the captain of the Moskva, the cruiser that was sunk last week, had died, gone down presumably with his ship. Well, he turned up alive and well at a ceremony in Sevastopol. There were also, as I recall, various claims about all sorts of dead generals and FSB officers, but in the case of Shoigu himself, well, there he has appeared alive and well and talking very amicably, as far as I could see, to Putin. These reports, these rumors, all originate with Ukrainian or Western sources. They're inherently unreliable, and as far as I'm concerned, they should all collectively be ignored. Anyway, to return to the report, Shoigu briefed Putin on state television about the situation in Mariupol. He said that the city is now securely under Russian control. He also said that the only remaining place which remains under the control of the Ukrainians is the Azovstal factory, where he estimated that there were over 2,000 Ukrainian troops of various descriptions hiding in what Putin described the catacombs. In other words, the underground tunnels and bunkers located underneath the factory. And Shoigu informed Putin that clearing these troops, these Ukrainian holdouts, would take around 3 to 4 days, and a plan had been drawn up to do this. Putin then made the decision that the storming of the Azovstal factory should not take place. It was unnecessary. There was no need to send Russian troops down into what Putin called the catacombs beneath the Azovstal factory. That would result in heavy losses for the Russians themselves in this kind of underground fighting, and all that needed to be done was to seal off the factory. And the Russian media and on television, apparently Putin said, so that not a fly could enter or leave the factory, though I would say that the official report provided by the Kremlin carefully edits out those particular words. So that's been the decision that Putin has made. Now, this briefing by Shoigu is obviously a staged event. Obviously, there's been extensive discussions by the Russian High Command, including Putin and Shoigu himself, about what to do about Azovstal, and I'm pretty sure that a consensus has been reached over some time that there is really no military benefit gained or political benefit gained by storming the factory. Bernhardt, the German ex-military officer who publishes on the Moon of Alabama, predicted that this is what the Russians would do, that they would seal off Azovstal, and that is exactly what they have done. Now, I'm going to make a further prediction. The condition of the Ukrainian troops in the Azovstal factory appears to be extremely bad. The comments made by some of them seem to be frankly desperate, and I would not personally be surprised if before very long we saw negotiations either for their surrender or for their withdrawal. And apparently yesterday they were again talking about being surrendering or being transferred to a third country and presumably being interned there in some form. So I personally would not be surprised if at some point we actually saw some kind of surrender or withdrawal of these troops in Azovstal. I would also say that it's become increasingly clear to me that some of the rumors about the people in Azovstal, the secret laboratories that were supposed there, the supposed scientific facilities, even the claims that there were NATO personnel there, I think it's become increasingly clear over these last few days that these reports were exaggerated. It still is astonishing that the Ukrainians made those repeated attempts to try to evacuate someone or something from Azovstal. 8 helicopters were lost in the process. Certain merchant ships were destroyed. But whatever it was, whoever it is that is in Azovstal, whom the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate, that person or persons seem to be Ukrainian. Undoubtedly, there are Western fighters there alongside the Ukrainians, but these are volunteers, or so it seems to me, volunteers who have obviously decided to join the Azov battalion, which, as I said, has acted as a kind of foreign legion to some extent of Western volunteers from the far right who have wanted to fight the Russians. And I would guess that it's those sort of people that are holed up with the Ukrainians inside the Azovstal factory. As was said by Robert Barnes and my colleague Alex Christoforou in a live stream we did on Tuesday on the Duran, what these desperate attempts to evacuate these people from Azovstal shows is how important they are to the Ukrainian political system. In other words, the far-right commanders in Azovstal are the sort of people that the various far-right militia groups, which clearly hold great influence in Kiev, wanted to see rescued. And their influence in Kiev is so great that the Ukrainian government was willing to risk, or rather expend, precious resources in helicopters, merchant marine ships, personnel to try to evacuate them to no useful purpose. So it's an indication again of the political balance of forces in Kiev. Well, there we go. So that is Mariupol. It seems that the battle there is, to all extent and purposes, over. The Russians will retain a blockade force to seal off the factory. As has been pointed out, they've made no pledges not to continue to shell and bomb it, and I suspect that is precisely what they will continue to do. But the assault forces, which had been concentrated in Mariupol in order to storm the factory, they will be recommitted elsewhere in more important places around the battle line. Now, here we're still getting all sorts of reports from all sorts of people. I should say I'm waiting for some reports from various people who are particularly well informed about these events, Jacob Dreisen being one. And as I understand it, there's been significant advances by Russian military units across Donbass as they tighten their grip around the Ukrainian forces that are still there. But I'm not going to go into details at the moment, simply because I don't have much more reliable information than I had yesterday, and we will have to see what comes through over the course of the day as the fighting in eastern Ukraine continues. Meanwhile, we are getting more and more signs of political rumbles. There's now reports in Germany that there's restlessness and there's moves to try to overthrow Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor. There's growing understanding or consensus that he has failed. There's exasperation at the fact that he is exasperation on the interventionist wing of the German political establishment, that he's not sending more weapons to Ukraine. And I suspect that he's also losing support from the other wing, the economic wing, which is becoming utterly exasperated by the spiraling economic crisis. The latest news from Germany is that producer prices in Germany increased in March by 30%. Now that is the highest growth since modern records began to be taken in Germany in 1949. Now, 1949 is an important year because, of course, that is the year when the German Federal Republic was basically put together and when the Deutschmark cured the hyperinflation crisis that Germany was experiencing at the end of the Second World War, the last months of the Second World War, and in the years which immediately followed. So it seems as if this is the highest inflation rate Germany has ever experienced since the establishment of the German Federal Republic. And that gives us some idea of how unstable the economic situation in Germany is becoming. And we have a similar political crisis underway in Britain at the moment, with growing challenges to the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Now, these supposedly are all connected with his decision, or rather the decision of his officials, but in which he was actively involved, to hold parties during the lockdowns that were taking place in the pandemic in the garden of 10 Downing Street. I have to say that I think this is a fairly thin pretext. I get the sense that the true reason why Boris Johnson's political authority is draining away is because there is, again, in Britain, a growing sense of economic crisis. Inflation, again, is rising. Living standards are plunging. There's every indication that we're looking now at a severe recession on the horizon. Of course, the political class, both in Germany and in Britain, don't want to admit that. And I have to say, if Olaf Scholz or Boris Johnson are removed, we will probably not see any change in policy. On the contrary, what we are far more likely to see is a further intensification of the existing policy. In Germany, there are going to be moves, it seems, to try and send more heavy weapons to Ukraine, something which the German army strongly opposes, but which the politicians seem to be determined to do. And in Britain, I suspect it will also be more of the same. In other words, the leaders who have led us into this disaster, Johnson and Scholz, respectively in Britain and Germany, are facing political problems, but the people who are maneuvering to remove them are only offering more of the same. This isn't going to cut it. This is only going to make our problems in Europe, in Britain, it's going to make them worse. I've come increasingly to the view that the European political class is not capable of changing course on this matter, not at least until there is a manifest economic crisis, the like of which we have not experienced in Europe since the end of the Second World War. And it's not impossible that even then they will try to cling on to this policy of economic war against Russia, because they are all emotionally and politically invested in it. In which case, we have to look either for a breakthrough by an anti-establishment, anti-political class politician in Europe, or for a major political change in the United States. Now, yesterday there was a debate in the French presidential election between the current incumbent, Emmanuel Macron, who is the embodiment of the French political class, and his challenger, Marine Le Pen. And I think most people who followed it feel that on this occasion, Marine Le Pen did an awful lot better than she did in 2017. And I would say objectively, actually, she probably did better than Macron did, in the sense that she talked more about the kind of problems that affect ordinary people in France, indeed, and elsewhere too. However, I still remain of the view that the structural problems that stand in the way of someone like Marine Le Pen, who has been categorized by labeled by the political class and the media as far right, are too strong to enable her to break through, and that ultimately we will get Macron again when the French vote in a few days. I'm not absolutely certain of this, but this has been my feeling all along, and I continue to retain that belief. Moreover, I doubt that Macron is going to change policies if he's re-elected with this economic war. It seems to me that he too now is emotionally and politically invested in it. I think that he too will demand more of the same. So that leaves the United States. And there perhaps, if we follow what people like Robert Barnes and Jacob Dreisen are saying, maybe there is a shift in the political mood. Maybe at the midterms we will see a sea change. Certainly it does seem to me that these legal cases, the Durham investigation, possibly the laptop gate investigation, I'm going to call it laptop gate, are now brewing in unpredictable ways, which could cause political damage, not just to the Democrats, but also to the administration itself, and perhaps to the president. I have to say, it is a very thin straw to clutch to, the hope that there will be that kind of political shift in the United States. For the time being, we remain committed, and I don't really see much sign of any real change of direction or of policy. On the contrary, everything points to more of the same, with a deepening economic crisis across the West, an extraordinary claim by the G7 finance ministers in Washington, who basically wrecked a G20 summit meeting that was of finance ministers that took place there. The G20, of course, brings together many countries. Currently, it's chaired by Indonesia. They refused to disinvite the Russians. The Russian finance minister, Siluanov, participated, but the G7, the Western leaders, refused to have anything to do with him, which meant that the whole G20 arrangement is now looking close to complete breakdown. Anyway, regardless of that, we're now, it seems to me, very close to a position where not only just the G20 summit is going to break down, but the G7 finance ministers published an extraordinary statement that they had calibrated their sanctions to do the maximum damage on Russia and the least damage to the world economy. All I will say about that is that that is completely untrue. As the global inflation crisis bites, people in Egypt, in the Middle East, in Africa, across Latin America, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, all over the global south, might find words to respond to that claim by the G7 summit finance ministers, which I'm going to make a guess will be unprintable. Well, thank you again for joining me today. I look forward to you joining me again soon in future programs, both on this channel and on Duran. Remember, you can find us on Rumble and Locals, as I said at the outset of the program. You can also find us on various other channels too. And of course, you can find links under this video. And of course, you can also find links to Patreon and Subscribestar, where you can support us if that is your choice. And please also don't forget our shop, where you can buy all the great things you will find there. Our hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, bomber jackets, magic mugs, and all the rest. And last but not least, if you like this video, please remember to press the like button and also to check your subscription to this channel. Thank you for joining me again today. More from me soon.